Hi, thanks for joining me today. Today we're going to make an Italian chickpea soup, and I'm Rachel Zierzo. This is Cooking Together, and we do this free cooking lesson every Wednesday, and it's been going on since the middle of March of this year. We started it when the stay-at-home order started, and we've just continued it because I really want to be able to provide this content to anyone that wants to learn and anyone that wants to cook together throughout the week and learn something healthy that they can make for themselves or their family. And so we usually do some kind of lunch or dinner meal. Today we're doing the chickpea soup, which is one of my favorites. And sometimes we'll do something else like a snack or a dessert just for variety. So let's get started because we want to kind of make this as the class goes on. We're gonna chop and then put things in the pot as we go. So we're gonna multitask just a little bit. We have some cooked pasta. You want to have that made ahead of time. If you don't have any right now, that's fine. You can make the soup, and when you're reheating the soup later, you can add some pasta to it. You don't have to have pasta in it every time you serve it. I've got some homemade chickpeas here. If you're using canned chickpeas, just make sure to drain them ahead of time. You want 1 or 2 cans, just depending on how thick you want the soup to be. I think I've got around 2 cups here. And then for vegetables, I've got about 1/2 of a yellow onion, 2 carrots, basically 2 large stalks of celery, 1 large zucchini, or you could use 2 small, 2 cloves of garlic, and then just as an extra thing, I diced up some butternut squash, about a cup or 1.5 cups of butternut squash, because we had a couple in the refrigerator that need to be used up, and they're just so beautiful. I love the color. So those weren't on the recipe, but it's definitely something you can add if you want. And then as far as herbs go, I have some fresh rosemary that we're going to cook along with the soup, and then some fresh basil and fresh parsley that we can put in towards the end or as a garnish. So let's get started slicing the onion here. I already peeled the onion, so that's going to take you a minute to slice off a little from the top and the bottom, slice through the middle, and then you can take the papery part off. So while this onion is sauteing, don't worry, you'll have time to catch up. I'm cutting along the ridges of the onion, and then I didn't cut all the way through so it would stay together, so you can see it's kind of like one of those blooming onions. And then you turn it 90 degrees and dice it. And go ahead and preheat your pan. I just heated mine up. You can heat your soup pot on medium or medium low for a few minutes. So don't put it on high because you'll scorch your pan and it might burn the oil when you put it in there. I'm going to turn this back on about low or medium low. And I'm going to put the onion in right away because it takes the longest to cook. And as you'll see during this recipe, I'm going to put about 2 to 3 teaspoons or a tablespoon of olive oil in. And since this soup is vegetarian, it doesn't have fat from animal products, and so you do need some oil in here to make your beans and vegetables more digestible. So don't try to make this oil-free because it's very hard to digest without any oil, and it tastes better this way too. So I put a couple pinches of salt in with the onions, and the way we're going to make this soup, we're layering flavor. So we start our layering with sauteing the onions with a pinch of salt and some olive oil, and we will let that go maybe about 5 minutes or so we'll have time to prep our other veggies. So every so often you can do a little saute. Make sure your heat isn't on too high. If you think it's gonna burn, you can either turn the heat down or you can add a little bit of water, and that will make sure it doesn't stick. I'm gonna slice the carrots next. Just take the tiniest bit off the top and the bottom. You don't wanna waste any of the carrot. I save these little carrot pieces, like these little nibs from the bottom that are clean. I save those for stock, and I also save the celery root and the leaves for stock. Make a vegetable stock or some other kind of stock. I put at the end, put it in at the end. And then I'm going to cut these to a more manageable size so they're smaller than the length of the knife. And then I think we're going to cut these into half moons or quarter moons. The biggest ones I might cut one more time. And you want the pieces to be small enough that they'll fit on a spoon. So you could even do a diced carrot here. That would be fine. Check the onions here. You can see it's getting toasty on the bottom there. So I'm going to turn the heat down so the onions don't burn. And I'm going to add just a little bit of my stock or water. Don't always have to do that, but since we're multitasking here, that'll make it easier so it won't burn while we're doing other things. And keep going. Make sure you curl your fingertips under so you don't mistakenly cut your fingers. And then these I will also cut in half lengthwise. If you're really curious and want to learn more about knife skills, I've got a course online called Cook Naturally Without a Recipe. And I created it last year with Nelson. He did all the film, the video work and editing. So it was a collaborative venture. And the course includes a substantial section on a whole unit on knife skills. So you'll learn how to slice and dice all the common vegetables in different ways. So like the onion, you'll learn how to dice and slice. I think those are the two ways. Slice it in a fajita cut. And the carrots, you'll learn how to do half moons and diced and rounds and I think flowers. I teach several different ways, maybe 4 or 5 ways of doing the carrots. You'll learn how to cut butternut squash, zucchini, kale, celery, and I'm sure there's more that I'm forgetting about. You learn how to dice up and mince herbs like this. So it's a really valuable course, what I used to teach at the culinary school when it was open. And now I'm just going to slice the celery. You could again do a diced celery here, but I was kind of in the mood for these little half moons. If the celery is really large, you could slice it in half like that. So maybe this end part I will slice in half. And if these rough edges you don't want in your soup, you can always put those in your stockpile. And along with the knife skills in that course, Cook Naturally Without a Recipe, you also learn all the basic cooking techniques. And so you'll learn how to bake, make a soup, make a nice pot of beans from scratch, how to saute, how to make sauces and dressings. So it's a really great introduction to natural foods cooking. There's one fish recipe in there. Otherwise, it's plant-based, because a lot of times people know how to grill meat and make things like that, but they don't know how to make all the different vegetable dishes and side dishes and things that would make their diet healthier. So that's why I wanted to focus on the plant-based aspect. Even if that's not your particular diet, it always helps to add more vegetables to your meals. Okay, let's add the carrots. I usually add another bit of olive oil at this point. Since I had the stock in there, it doesn't need it quite as much, but go ahead and add your remaining olive oil, maybe another 1 to 3 teaspoons. Just kind of depends on size of your pan and how many veggies you have. So we'll add, I'll let that oil heat up a little bit there. Add the carrots and the celery and butternut squash. This is something optional that you could use if you have some, but don't worry about it if you don't have it. And that is the beauty of these kind of soups, is you can really add different ingredients. If you don't have everything in a recipe, you can modify it. So I've made the same kind of soup with zucchini, onion, and tomato, and with the same herbs and chickpeas and everything, but it was more of a, maybe like a Tuscan version of this soup because it has the tomatoes. But really, in a lot of traditional Italian cooking, you won't even see a lot of tomatoes, because tomatoes were introduced later into the cuisine there, and of course now they're ubiquitous, synonymous with Italian cooking, but at one point they were just an imported thing from the Americas. And I'm going to add some fresh rosemary that I chopped. This was about maybe half of a sprig. So add some rosemary if you have it, either fresh or dried, about maybe a half teaspoon to a teaspoon, depending on how much of that rosemary flavor you like. And I'm also going to add a couple cloves of garlic. So something that you might not know about rosemary as an herb is that it really does need to be cooked into your food, rather than put on at the end like a garnish. I'm taking the peel off of the garlic. And then they're already kind of bruised, smashed a little bit, and now I can mince them up. Make sure to curl your fingers under, but also put your hand on top to protect it, and just gather it back up. But rosemary does need to be cooked into the food, so I usually add it about midway, and sometimes I add it when I'm making risotto, and I put it in with the onions at the beginning, or if I'm adding butternut squash or something, I'll add it then. So it has a chance to cook and flavor the dish, and it mellows out. And a lot of people don't like rosemary because they're using it as a fresh garnish, but it really needs to be cooked. So it also does really well on roasted vegetables like roasted potatoes, or roasted sweet potatoes. We love putting rosemary on those, and it does great that way, baked or roasted or grilled. Just make sure it's cooked. Okay. And even though I've got this kind of like a ziti or penne pasta here, this is a gluten-free variety that I had that I wanted to use. I really like to use other versions of short pastas in here, like fusilli or spiral. pasta works really well in here. I also like farfalle, or the butterfly bow tie pastas, or the little wheels that you can get. There's so many different kinds of short pastas. The soup wouldn't be as good with noodles, because then you'd have the little pieces of veggie and the long noodles would be a little hard to manage. So I think that'd be better with a short variety of pasta. Okay, I can really smell the garlic in here. It smells so delicious. I actually cooked my chickpeas with garlic, so I didn't necessarily have to put more garlic in here, but I don't mind putting a little extra. Okay, now I'm going to add about 3 or 4 cups of either water or vegetable stock, or in this case, this is actually turkey and vegetable broth that I made last week that I needed to use up. We cook turkey for our cats, and then we save the bones and make broth, and try not to waste any of it. Okay, I'm just going to use all of that. And my stock was preheated just because I don't want to keep you too long here. And I forgot to put the zucchini in, so don't let me forget that. Usually I put the zucchini in a couple, 2-3 minutes after the other vegetables, and I saute it a little bit. But since I forgot about it, I'll just put it in now. And if you want to do this again, slice your zucchini in half to make it more manageable. And I'm going to do a dice since this is such a big zucchini. If it was a smaller zucchini, I would probably do either half moons or quarter moons like we did the carrots. Let's see. And I'm just going to stack them a little bit like that, and maybe cut these into thirds. And then turn them 90 degrees. Let's see, I'm going to turn up the heat just a touch. Well, I'll put the lid on after I put the zucchini in. Let's put this zucchini in. Wow, that looks so good. You know, that might be enough zucchini for mine since I added all of that butternut squash. But what do you think, Nelson? Should I add more zucchini, or does that look good?
Well, it's pretty good.
I think it's good. I might add a little bit more water. I probably need your help getting some water. Put another cup in there.
Want me to warm these up?
That's okay. I'll just add it little by little. And put the lid on, and we will cut up some herbs for our garnish. And I usually add a little bit of parsley and basil, or basil to the soup right at the end. And then I'll also serve some in the bowls. Thanks, Nelson. So I probably have about 4 cups of liquid in there. So luckily I had some parsley outside, and I've already washed it. Just want to make sure that it's dry, and I like to save these stems to put in stock also. So I'm going to have a nice stock pile here. Just going to take the things out that I don't want in the stock so it's all ready. And I'll actually put all these stock ingredients in a Ziploc bag and freeze them until I need them for a broth or stock. So when you've got something like parsley, make sure the leaves are dry. I may have gotten them a little bit wet on my board here, and then you can kind of roll them up into a little ball. And then just curl your fingers under. And then you can gather it up again. So if you need to reference the full recipe for this, we put the link in the original post, but we will add it again. It's basically at my website, cookloveheal.com/recipes, and you can just type in chickpea or chickpea soup, and it will come right up. It's Italian chickpea soup, what we named it. And there's also a recipe linked in that post for homemade chickpeas. I encourage you to try that someday, maybe on a weekend or an evening when you've got some time. You've got to soak the chickpeas ahead of time and then drain out the water and then put them in a pot. I usually use a pressure cooker, speeds it up and it makes them softer, but you can also use a pot and just cook it for a longer period of time. And I like to add kombu and garlic when I'm cooking chickpeas. Kombu is a seaweed, kelp, brown kelp, and it adds the best flavor to beans. It's amazing. I love it. And it also adds minerals, makes them more digestible. And you just will not have trouble digesting beans, I promise you, if you make them with those steps from scratch. So try it. And what I do is I make a really big batch of beans where it seems absolutely ridiculous that we'd never be able to eat that many. Maybe 1 or 2 pounds of beans at a time, at least, of the dry beans. And then when they're all cooked, I season them with some sea salt, cook them a little bit longer, and then I let them cool, and I'll package them up in either Ziploc bags like the freezer bags or in little containers that are freezer proof. So I'm just stacking these basil leaves now and slicing through. And anyway, what that ends up doing when I can freeze away those beans is I've got beans for probably the next 3 or 4 months at least of different varieties, because each time I make some kind of bean, I freeze them away. And so I might have 3 bags, like quart-sized bags of each variety, and I just keep going, every maybe 2 weeks or 10 days I'll make a batch of beans. Sometimes I make pinto or black beans or chickpeas or white beans. Those are kind of my favorites that I tend to rotate. And if I need to make something like hummus, we're having a picnic or going to someone's house or whatever I might need hummus for, all I have to do is go in the freezer and get one of those bags, and it'll thaw overnight in the fridge, or I can thaw it on the counter in a couple of hours. And I've got really good beans to make hummus with, so much better than the canned ones.
Your mom says hi. She said Mom is enjoying having lunch with you today.
Yay, hi Mom. Well, I'm wearing this shirt today in honor of the New England fall colors. I know that most of the leaves are probably down, but since we don't get fall colors until maybe Thanksgiving time, if that, I miss being there this time of year. So okay, let's take a look at the soup. And yesterday was my daughter's birthday. We got to talk to my mom last night on the phone. We actually had a car parade party for her with a lot of her classmates and some family friends that stopped by on Monday. Her birthday was yesterday, but we did that party on Monday, and it was so fun. Totally safe, socially distanced. We had a really good time. A couple of people got out of their cars and were on the lawn with their masks, but most people drove by and waved and held out signs or threw confetti, which we're still picking up, but it was fun at the time. And some people played music, like Celebration was one of the songs. I forget what the other one was. So anyway, I recommend that if you're looking for a birthday party idea for either a adult or a child. I think it would be equally fun. So I think this is just about done. I'm just gonna wait for those zucchini to cook maybe for another minute, but it looks really good. And what we're gonna do is serve this. I might do one of each of these bowls, a shallow bowl, which is better for photographing, we found, and a deeper bowl, which is kind of better for keeping the soup warm. And I'm going to put a little bit of pasta at the bottom. If you want to make this without pasta, you could saute up some greens or just add some greens into here, like some kale would be perfect, or spinach. You would want to add those right at the end so they don't overcook. And the other thing we need to do is try this for seasoning. Make sure there's enough salt. Okay. I could use just a little bit of salt and pepper, I think. And at this point, I'll add a pinch of basil. Whoop, there it goes. And a pinch of parsley. In a couple weeks, Izzy's going to be home, learning from home from school. Maybe she can join us for the next, or in 2 weeks, the first week of November. Maybe she can join us for that episode that we do. She'll have to come up with a recipe that she wants to do. It was a big surprise. She wanted pizza for her birthday meal. I'm being sarcastic because that's always been her favorite meal is pizza. I remember my birthday's in January, and I remember one time my mother asking me, "What do you want for your birthday to eat?" And I said, "Beef stew." And I didn't know anything back then. I didn't have any formal training in macrobiotics or anything, but like I do now. But that was kind of the perfect thing for a cold winter day to ask for a hearty beef stew, right? Instead of a watermelon slushy. That would be good if you have a July or August birthday. Okay, wow. I think that is just about the right amount of salt. I like to cook the salt in. The black pepper got me. Sometimes I don't add black pepper because of that. It makes me choke a little bit. But I like to cook the salt in a little bit, simmer it for just a bit, because then it will go into the ingredients of the soup and not just in the broth. I don't like just having a salty broth. And you want the soup to be seasoned well so that it tastes really delicious and it brings out all the flavors, but you don't want it to be undersalted or oversalted. Oversalted would be that all you can taste is salt, and you want to guzzle a few glasses of water along with your soup because it's just too salty, like soups that you get at restaurants.
Or it makes you crave something sweet.
Yeah, or after you eat, you're just craving sugar because there was too much salt. So you want to have that right balance, and just you'll get to where you can get the right balance without too much effort. The longer you work at it. Okay, so garnish these soups a little bit. This one we're probably going to take a photograph of. And that might be it. We'll just kind of put this fresh stuff. It's always nice to put a fresh garnish. Should I hold this up or can you see it okay?
I can see it really well. Yeah.
Okay. It's always nice to put a fresh garnish on your hot soup because not only does it look good, but it tastes good, and it's nice to have that contrast between the longer cooked meal or the longer cooked soup and then that fresh garnish. So don't forget about that. My cooking teacher used to harp on us to do that, so I haven't forgotten. All right, well, the last thing I wanted to say was if you've tried signing up for my newsletter, that's at cookloveheal.com. There's a pop-up right there or a place you can sign up, or you can go to /subscribe. It's real easy to find how to sign up for my newsletter. If you haven't gotten any newsletters or recipes from me since you signed up, go ahead and sign up again or send me your email, because we realized about a week ago that our pop-ups for newsletter signups were not collecting the emails. We were getting notifications there were signups, but it wasn't collecting the emails. So we missed maybe 3 or 4 months of signups during a really active time. We were disappointed about that, to not be able to keep in touch with people that want to be part of the community. So go ahead and subscribe again or send me your email, and it's real easy to get signed up. So thanks everybody. Look forward to cooking together with you again next week. And in the meantime, I hope you'll try making chickpea soup. Buon appetito. Looks good.
Mm-hmm.